Good evening, everybody. Welcome. I am Matt Nelson, Superintendent of Schools for the Sanford School Department. Tonight, we're here to talk about school safety. And I know as I stand before you as a superintendent, I am extremely proud to be the superintendent in Sanford. I see that pretty much on a daily basis. But I know with the incident that we had earlier this fall back in November, that really hit home. You see our slide behind us, our children, our schools, our community. I wouldn't wish that event on anybody because it was, even though it felt real to our students and to our staff and to our first responders and everyone, to law enforcement, our SROs, right on down the line. But through that, there are positives that come out of that, things that we can be able to take away from that, for us to be able to make sure that what we're doing is working and is right. And it also gives you a sense of our community that really came together to be able to understand for that. There's been a lot of work that's gone on behind the scenes. We have a lot of strong relationships that have been built with the school department, with the Sanford community, with the city, with law enforcement, with the police department, fire department, medical services, all of that. And that came in so handy for that. We have made some changes over time. I know when I was a principal back at Westbrook Middle School, I used to be upset when our SRO parked her police car in front of the school. Imagine that. That was some time ago, but I didn't want people to think we didn't have a safe school. And look at how we've changed now, because now that is a sense of security that we now have. And safety's always been a priority in our schools. But one of the things that we've done now is to really understand that that's changing, and we have to be changing it, our approach to that. Safety can't be one of those things that you kind of check off a box, maybe at the beginning of the school year. It has to be something for us that is internalized, and it's ongoing. It's ongoing right from as we get ready in the summer to prepare for school and right on through, and it's still ongoing. That's ongoing for anything that we have in terms of communication that's going out in our schools to our staff with that. And I'm joined this evening by Assistant Superintendent Steve Boussier and our two school resource officers, Paul Goldsmith and Joe Jourdain, are going to help tonight as we it's an important part. We're recording tonight for people who can't be here, but this is an important part because of how that philosophy has changed over time, and we want people to be able to have a general idea of our approach with that. If we look at really the goal tonight, we're looking to provide an overview of our safety practices and procedures that are in place that ultimately are keeping our students and our staff, that are in place to keep our staff and our students safe with that. We're not going to be giving away any trade secrets with that, but I think it's important that we can be able to oversee and give you an overview of what that is for it. I talk about the community and that sense of community that comes in that is so important, and I talk about those importance of relationships. When we come back to talk about school safety, it's more about what we're already doing proactively that are part of what we always do that are going to really come back to help us before you get into those situations that can maybe avoid those situations from happening. I talked about the relationships that we have both externally with all of our stakeholders, but that's also the relationships that we have internally, the relationships that we have with our students. And we're talking about everyone from our bus drivers to our food service workers to our administrative assistants, anyone that's being able to come in and be able to talk and interact with students in a way that we're using to value those relationships so we can see if there's a change, so we can see if there's someone there that we're worried about. Social emotional learning, especially as we are on the other side of the pandemic, that's something that is super, super important. That's become right there with school safety with us as one of our goals that we're being able to kind of focus on is that social emotional learning. We've really made a shift in our the practices that we use around discipline. We're not looking at a model that is more punitive based. We're getting away from that. That would be something that could be more old school and really focused on a restorative practices that really gets to not punishing someone into compliance, but more about getting into the harm that was particularly caused in a situation with those restorative practices. Our school policies are always important. Those are things that we're always kind of being able to reflect on and update to make sure that those are in line with us to be able to help around school safety. I mentioned those student supports. That's everyone. I talked about who people interact with, but we also have an outstanding school counseling department. We've expanded that with some of our ESSER funds to be able to come back to have more social workers and to have people in positions to be able to come back and support our students. And the other thing is being able to give our students positive, healthy activities. That is obviously first and foremost during the school day, but it also is talking about the extracurricular activities that we have in a supportive community, so that if people can be able to see something that might not be right, they're going to be able to communicate that. That happens often for us, that we're able to intervene early when we see signs of that, so that that will be able to prevent situations from where it goes on and potentially could lead to someone really in a dark and a bad place to be able to come back to cause unsafe situations for that. So I think that's something that we value, to put an emphasis on those, for those be able to support before we even get into our safety procedures. I'm going to turn it over to Steve, and Steve's going to be able to give us some more information about other things that we have going on.
Good evening. So when we talk about safety in the Sanford School Department, we of course have a comprehensive crisis management plan that includes components for what are we going to do to prevent injuries from happening, to prevent crises from happening, how are we going to respond when those crises happen, and then after the crisis is over, how are we going to recover? And as we look back on the incident that happened back in November, we learned a lot about that recovery piece and the impact that crises have on the community, our students, our staff, our community as a whole. And so we do have a comprehensive plan that was well developed about 10 or 15 years ago. It was well developed. Each year we review that crisis plan, we make adjustments, but it is in place. Beyond the crisis plan, we have a district safety committee that meets monthly. The committee is made up of teachers, ed techs, administrative assistants, administrators. Our SRO is a part of that team, and the fire department is part of that team. And the purpose of that team is, on a monthly basis, we talk about safety concerns, we brainstorm solutions, problem solve, to make sure that we are staying on top of things. Beyond the district safety committee that we have that meets once a month, we also have building crisis and safety teams, and they work to identify concerns within their building. They do the same thing, they problem solve, and they really work through when we talk about what are those drills that we do with students, what are those practices that we do in our schools. They make sure that those things are in place with that. So that we have the district level plan, district level safety committee, followed by the building teams with that. And we're going to talk a little bit, go more into depth about really what are our practices and procedures that we have in place in the district, and what are some of those drills that we do with students, those practice drills that we do with students and staff, and how our focus has shifted. So that's really what we're going to talk about moving forward. So in our community, I think we're very fortunate we're very fortunate in that we have had a number of construction projects that have really made our schools safer. And I think anybody who works in the school, if you ask our students, I think they will agree. First thing is, all our outside doors lock. That pretty much was in place prior to the construction, but all our outside doors lock. Now, inside, internally, all our doors internally lock. Prior to construction, not all of our inside doors, classroom doors locked. Now they all lock. If we look at the school constructions, now when you enter our buildings, you have to buzz to get in. And our schools have vestibules as a second layer of safety. With one school left that we're looking to have a solution there to address that issue over there. But all of our other schools have vestibules where you have to be buzzed in. Visitors are screened. It used to be you could just walk into any school and say, hey, I'm here to pick up Calvin, and you're good to go. Now, you have to be, but why are you here? What brings you here? You're screened before you are let in. ID badges are required of all staff. This is important so we know who is in our buildings. If we have somebody that doesn't have their ID badge on, that doesn't look familiar, we stop them. We say, what brings you here? We have surveillance cameras. Surveillance cameras both inside and outside the schools that are very sophisticated. These cameras have allowed administrators to identify if there's a problem that is identified. Let's say a student wrote a note that was placed in the bathroom that was going to cause harm to our students. The administrators now have the capability to go in, view that camera to prevent crisis from happening. Outside in our buildings, we have cameras that do the same thing. So really that surveillance cameras, that ability to see what's going on in our schools. We have two great SROs at the middle school and the high school, and they provide support to our elementary schools on request. And I would say all the officers are on duty. Oftentimes they will come to the building, they may have lunch. Our kids are familiar with the Sanford Police Department, and they are a great resource for our community. Our communication system, with technology, one of the great aspects of technology is we can get communication out to parents, to staff quickly. We have external communication that you guys all receive at 5:15 in the morning that we're not going to have school because of snow. You have that external communication that we can get to you rather quickly. Internally, we have a system that we are working to implement called Alertus, where we can communicate with staff when there is an issue internally, not on email, but really internal quickly. So that internal communication is really key for us. And really, school safety is about, a lot of it is about ongoing improvements. What have we learned? With any crisis situation, you learn from it. You learn from it, you grow from it, and what can we do differently? And now I'm going to turn it over to our SROs that are going to talk about our approach to safety drills that we do with students.
I'll take that. Good evening, everybody. Officer Jourdain, Joe, excuse me. I work primarily at the Sanford Middle School, and we both fill in for the elementary schools. I don't know where your kids are or what grade they're in, but we try to pop in, get that communication with them, let them get to know us. This is who we are. This is what we wear every day. A lot of kids ask questions, and we're honest with them because they're going to see police officers. They're going to engage with police officers in the community, and a lot of these kids don't have that opportunity. So we wear this so they can see us, they get to know us, they know that they can come to us and try to build that trust. Mr. Nelson talked about building those relationships with these kids, and I found you can have all these safety measures on that was up here previously, and they don't matter if you don't have that communication with these kids, the trust, the parents, all the parents here. We constantly communicate with the parents if there's an issue, try to work it out. We get the kids to trust us, come to us, talk to us, and when they do that, we're getting information that we wouldn't otherwise get. And that's a huge thing. So that's kind of like we're building on those. I think pretty much everyone's seen us, both of us around, but I'll get right into what this program is and what we do. So since the late 50s, fire has always been taught to kids. It's always been appropriate. We have fire drills. Your kids come home, they make you try fire drills. I'm sure you've all had to run out of your house and run to the tree, right? Because the kids are teaching you, because they're teaching back. That's just what we do. And it's socially acceptable. It's the norm. It's fine. They come home talking about fire drills. And school safety training is foundational, and it builds upon what we teach it from kindergarten up. So part of this ALICE program that we're doing is, it's a lifelong skill. It's something that we're teaching, and I like to, when I teach it, I don't talk about this is a school thing. This is a life thing. This is something that you're going to use in the grocery store, at church, at the mall. This is something that everyone in this room should actually be doing and learning. And we teach these kids that, so when they get on to adulthood, they're going to be empowered to be in a situation and understand where they're going to go, and it's a skill set applied every day of life. I kind of covered that. So it's just something that they can take with them and part of the whole process and build upon. Then and now. So I'm going to talk a little bit on the next slide about why are we changing? Did it always work? We had lockdowns, right? We all remember lockdowns. I graduated, I'm not telling you, 92. So there wasn't lockdowns then. It was a different time. It was a different thing. We grew up differently. Generations change. There's always that progression. We have social media now. Social media, kids see everything. They do everything. Your sixth grader is actually probably a senior compared to what we were. With the information that they get and what they see, what they share, that's just reality. So we had to change with the times, and there's programs out there. So it's not me. I'm not doing anything. I think one more time. Okay. So I'm going to read this. ALICE training empowers an individual to use the best options for them in the situation they're in. And what's the best thing for me to do right now with the information I have? I can't sit there and tell the teachers, I can't tell anybody, what are you going to do in a situation? Because we all have different capabilities, different experience levels, different life experience. We may be in charge of people. We may be on our own. We may be seeing perception is a huge thing. So how we perceive the problem. So we're teaching you, so in the situation that you are in, how to act upon that. Oh, we skipped something, didn't we? This is our first go around on this, so we'll get it right. So, then and now, sorry. My note's wrong. I think you just had a note there to go with that, right? Yep, I did. So, then and now. So, the history of lockdowns, what lockdowns were, so 1970 in Los Angeles, all the schools were outside based with a fence along the sidewalk. 1970s, you can imagine Los Angeles, California, drive-by shootings. So when the kids would be in a classroom, they'd be in a brick classroom, this typical construction out there, windows, they're in there to drive-by shooting. So what's the best thing to do? You're on a locked campus with a fence in a building. Everybody sit down, get on the floor, and get low. And then stay there and don't move. And then that was fine, and we did that forever, because if something doesn't work, we don't fix it. Right? That's what we did, and it was fine. Then with technology and information and things changing, our threats were no longer outside, they became inside. They would come into our schools and that. So does that work anymore? Does that work where we just sit there and not do anything? So part of this program that we're doing is that foundational building, and Officer Goldsmith's going to talk about that. Real quick on this program we're teaching, ALICE, it's been around, and I'm going to just read this. It's backed by the FBI, DHS, FEMA. It's a new standard of care by the Department of Education. It's adopted over 300,000 K-12 schools and universities, F-1000 companies, government agencies, and nonprofit. So it's out there. It's been tested. It's done. You're going to see that. You're going to be like, oh, we're not teaching anything. We're just teaching to think and what's best for you in that situation.
Thank you. Good job. How's everybody doing? It's Paul Goldsmith, School Resource Officer. Yeah, we all have the same philosophy, of course. It's all about building connections with staff, students. That's primarily our job. And then after that, it's school safety, and that's what we're there for. So we're going to discuss the ALICE program. I'm going to discuss that more in detail. It's basically option-based training. So whatever situation that someone is in during a critical incident, there has to have options to get them to safety or stay safe in every situation. So we'll get into the ALICE acronym: alert, lockdown, inform, counter, and evacuate. So in every situation, there's going to be a first notification, which is the alert. On November 15th, my alert was dispatch. Everybody in the school's first alert, and then Mr. Peterman's alert was me telling them something's going down. The students and staff, their alert was Mr. Peterman's voice over the loudspeaker. So that's the alert. You get an alert, and that's your first notification. I am going to read directly from the ALICE program on these. I apologize for reading in front of you. I try not to do it too much, but I like to get the verbiage exactly right. So yeah, alert is your first notification of danger. It involves recognizing signs of danger and receiving information about the danger from others. It can be as simple as accepting the announcements about an intruder or hearing the sound of a gunshot. So if a staff or student is in a room, they hear an explosion, that's their alert. And then they have to then go to the next situation, which would be inform. But I'm gonna go through. So where are we? Go back again. Where's the acronym? So it's easier to remember as ALICE because obviously it's a word, we remember it better, but really, if you go from alert to inform, sometimes that's where you have to go because you have to then get the information out. So you get the alert, and then people have to then inform, give information out. So the inform, communicate real-time information about the violent intruder's location, use clear and direct language via any communication means possible, do not use code words, and relay as much information as you can so those involved are empowered to act as the situation requires. That may not always be a violent intruder situation. It could be, we could also talk about gas leaks, other types of situations. We got to talk about weather problems, whatever may be the case, information has to get out there. And now the options: lockdown, counter, evacuate. So lockdown, if evacuation is not a safe option, barricade entry points, use items near you to fortify the entry points to make it difficult for anyone to enter, prepare to evacuate or spread out in a room, and prepare to counter if necessary. So going back to what Officer Jourdain talked about, the traditional lockdown was basically hide under your desk, hide in a corner, don't move, don't say anything, and you're all in one spot. We've obviously, through history of what we've seen, that doesn't work. That does not keep kids safe. You have to have other options. So you got to spread out in the room and whatnot, and then that's when counter could also take place. Counter is only when the violent intruder is literally right there. That is when counter takes place. It's basically when in close proximity to the violent intruder, create noise and movement, using distraction to reduce the shooter's ability to shoot accurately. Counter focuses on distraction and control techniques that leverage strength in numbers and the element of surprise. We can actually probably click through this, I'm sorry. So we did alert. Oh, no, go forward. Yeah, we did alert. We did lockdown. So securing in place, yeah, I did that. Inform, go ahead. Communicate real-time information, yeah, go ahead. And counter I talked about, all right, go ahead. So yeah, distance and movement is important. Evacuate, when safe to do so, run from danger using non-traditional exits if necessary. Rally points should be predetermined and included in drills. There may be situations where, when I said options-based training, because there may be situations where lockdown is the best case for a certain group of people in a situation, and then evacuation may be the best. So if there's a violent intruder, I'm just gonna use this school, for instance, end of the red wing. And the end of the green wing knows that there's no violent intruder in that wing, then evacuate may be their best option. So that's where we teach them all so that staff and students and everyone involved can make the best decision on which one of those that we do. Go ahead. I think that may be Yep, so evacuate, obviously. The best place out of harm's way, just get to there and be safe. All right, go ahead. Evacuations could be conducted for a variety of reasons. Oh, so yeah, earlier, so storms, natural events, fire, critical incidents, power outage. Of course, we talk about violent critical incidents. We talk about intruders, you know, because that's kind of like the focus on everybody's mind. But this training applies to all those situations that may come in place that we may have to react to. All right, go ahead. Reunification, I think someone else is going to take over.
That's me.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. So reunification, I mentioned earlier when we had the incident back in November, there were a lot of takeaways from that. And one of those for us was around reunification. Because when we have our plans that Steve mentioned about our crisis plans, there's reunification that's part of that plan. But when have we ever practiced that, right? That is only something that we only have that's kind of listed there. And so when we had the incident back in November, that's something that we had to put that into action. It had to go right from paper where we hadn't practiced it before. And so there were some things there that there were a lot of takeaways that we learned that it sounds good when you look at it on a crisis plan, but when you actually put it into place. And so that's been something I mentioned earlier, that there were some takeaways that were going to be very helpful for our plans. We're now, as part of the practicing things that we're doing, is we have practicing of reunification. It goes beyond just identifying what the site is, but you also have to go back and talk about what the roles are, okay? What you have for the roles and what we did. There's a lot of timing for that also has to take place, okay? We have different reunification sites depending on what the situation was. The incident happened in November. Instead of having the reunification site down at Alumni Stadium, we decided to have it in another part of the city, okay? With that, the best of intentions in communicating, we let people know where that was. What do you think everybody did? They rushed to that particular area. Understood, but something for us that's information we have to be very careful about. When people were there, we also had, it took time for us to get all 1,300 students and staff over to that area. So we were going to not start releasing people until everyone was there. The last thing we wanted to do was to be able to give you your son, but we wouldn't be able to give you your daughter because she wasn't there yet, because she was still en route. And that's tough. We also realized that we're talking about an intense event. So you have some roles that are defined for people in that. Sometimes those roles don't work. Sometimes we found that we want our teachers with our kids. They know our kids in that situation. We want our school counselors with our kids in those particular situations. So that was something, as we talk about, and you look at what our protocol is, we are looking at a situation where we're not just planning for one site. There are multiple sites to come in that we have to plan. A lot of that is something that on that particular day, there's a lot of coordination that has to happen. There's coordination that has to happen with our police department and other city officials for us to be able to do that. We also have to have some contingency plans that are right there on site to be ready for that. I mentioned the importance of our counselors and our teachers, our school nurse. That's something that we also, before we go to the site, we have to do a check to make sure that's okay, and we have to make sure that that site is still safe as well. It's not just show up for that. All of you, as we also go to the reunification sites, all of our students have some different needs, right? Those can be everything from some physical needs that we have to be able to make sure that we've taken into effect and account for. And then, as I mentioned, we also have that responsibility to make sure that everyone is accounted for, to be able to do that. So that was an important piece, one of those takeaways for us. You heard as we talk about with the ALICE training, how that situational awareness is really important. This was a situation for us. We now have things that are prepared in advance, that if we know we have to go to a reunification site, we've got that information. okay? For us, if it was something where we had to move an elementary school, we're just not, we have to be able to know who we're releasing our students to be able to do that, and we have to have that backup information to be able to do that for our reunification site to do it. Another big takeaway was communication, okay? This was something on my end where I know as superintendent, I could have done a lot better in this particular area. The power of social media is very powerful, and it's very fast, and it's very quick. As we were sitting there with this particular event, I know for me, a lot of what I've come from personally is any information I want to put out, I want to make sure that it's accurate. That's the most important thing, that you have to be able to trust that the information that you're receiving is accurate. On our standpoint, guess what? There's not a lot of time there for us to be able to wait to make sure that that's accurate when everything else is going on. And we had a lot of misinformation that was flying around on that particular incident back in November. And the takeaway for us is, and as Steve mentioned, we do have the power of some things that we can send out. We were sitting there right there typing up, ready to send something out, but I had to wait, okay, till I got the confirmation. And that wasn't what you feel was a lot of time, but guess what? Any time is a lot of time. Craig knows, as I was talking to him of the incident, when I was trying to be able to get that information that I could send out. And Craig's doing his absolutely best with the team to be able to do that. And so what you're going to see, the takeaway for that is we can send out information from the school that's accurate, okay? But it also gives you, as families and as parents, a peace of mind to be able to also know, okay, this is the information that's coming from the school, so that there's not, you've got something, rather than what you're hearing bouncing around, because even the information that we had from people who were internal was not always completely accurate. And so that's something that in the world that we live into now, we have to be able to make those adjustments to make sure, and that's a takeaway that we have when it comes back to the communication. That's something that starts with the district level, with the district communication that we give out. It still has to be accurate, and really right now it has to be more timely in terms of if we're going to be in a lockdown, even if that's something where I reach out and let people know we're in lockdown, even if I 2 minutes later send something out to say we're not in lockdown anymore, what's the harm in that, right? As opposed to waiting to be able to say we're out of lockdown. That frequent communication, as long as it's accurate, I think is a big takeaway for us to be able to utilize those resources. Steve mentioned also what we've been able to help with our staff, to be able to help them. You're going to see, as Paul and Joe mentioned, that we've got the situational awareness where if we can be communicating with people, we may be removing people from where an incident is, rather than keeping them there where they don't know. And so that gets back to some of that communication as one of the big takeaways that we had from that incident for us going forward. I'm going to turn it back over to Joe, talking about parents and the role they have.
Thank you, sir. I take it everybody in this room has kids. That's why we're here, right? And I get it. You're reading the bullet points behind me. We're going to talk about it a little bit, but just know where this is coming from. So I'm just steadily teaching the class. I'm going to talk to you for a second. I'm a dad. My son was in the building. I had 2 nieces and a nephew in the building as well that day. And I get it. You want to rush. You want to do things. You want to respond. You got to be with your kids. But we got to understand, too, why we need to let people do their work. And the responders, they're trained to do what they're supposed to do. When we add a mix of people in, it makes it more difficult to work. And these are just some of the things we're going through, like standby for district communication. Mr. Nelson was talking about that. He was talking about pushing that out. That communication is coming. Lessons learned, we're working on it. We're improving more and more. And I'm not going to rehash what he said, but that's something that's working. I don't know, you're not going to do it, but avoid social media. I was looking on it after, in hindsight, I saw professional firefighter sites saying, this is going on and this happened. And I actually had firefighters' spouses in the school reach out saying, this is what happened. And it wasn't. People are pushing out the information that causes that increased anxiety and everything. I bet everyone here looked at social media, and everybody in this room had a different experience because of that social media, and turned out it wasn't what it was. So it's just something, get your information from a timely, trusted source. Stay away from the school. That's easier said than done, right? You're going to want to come here. You're going to want to be with your kids. We had instances where there were people, first responders were working. They were trying to do their job in a dynamic situation which they've never dealt with before. They've had the training. They went above and beyond to come in and do what they're supposed to do. Some people had to stop what they were doing because parents were getting blocked, and then they were coming through the woods. In a dynamic situation, we don't know what we're dealing with. We don't know what we're responding to. But if you got people coming out of the woods to come get your kids, then that takes away resources from what they're trained to do to respond to that. Some thoughts: gather with friends and family. Be there together. Support each other. You know, just have that conversation. Reach out. Have that social network. People you can trust. Talk to. Support each other. Maybe carpool to a reunification site. And this isn't all about a violent critical incident. This could be anything. So if we get a communication and something coming out, we don't have earthquakes here. We don't have lava going everywhere, right? We're not California. We're pretty safe. But we do have snowstorms. We do have, all our schools are fed by natural gas. We have gas tanks. We've had gas leaks. We've evacuated the school. We put them somewhere else. We have a gas leak. We're going to go to a reunification site because we live in Maine. We got 4 seasons. Could be pouring rain, could be cold. These kids are going to be going out there. They might not have jackets on. We don't want them standing out there looking at it or looking at a fire or doing anything. We're going to get them to a reunification site. So it isn't always about something as a negative thing. We just need to keep these kids safe, and that's part of it. I think this is still me. Yes. Yep. So this one, I just want to compare something too, and I'm going to tell some stories. One story and compare something. You see a fire. You're going to run in the fire and try to go save somebody, help somebody when the fire department there is working? Probably not, because they're trained. They have the equipment. They practice this. They know what they're doing. They know how to go in and help somebody. So even as a police officer, I've been to plenty of fire scenes, see house on fire. And if there's firefighters there doing their job, I'm going to do my job. And that's stand by and if they need me. Same thing with EMT. If you had a family member have something wrong and they go down and they had a heart attack, and you're going to do the best you can, but when the EMTs get there, you let them do their job. You know, you don't go over and pull them off like, I'm going to wing it. We'll see what I can do. You know? So it's something to think about, and that's kind of like what we do. As police officers, we train, we work together, where it's a big collaborative effort where we all get together and we're making a better community and a stronger community, kind of like what was up there. And just a quick story on that day. We have a regional SRT team, a special response team. They were actually training that day just down the road. The call came in, and these guys, they train. They have all the equipment. They have everything you can actually respond to with everything they need. I was looking at the video footage. Most of them came in, you know what they were wearing? T-shirts and pistols. That's basically what they came in with, because that's what they were doing. But that day, four of those operators jumped in a vehicle, in a police car, and came down here to come in, and they went directly into the school without hesitation, without any afterthought, anything. On the way down, one of those guys, a close friend of mine, told me that they almost got T-boned by a car running through a red light. Later that night, I didn't think much of it. So later that night, social media, I can't stand it. You know, I'm just kind of looking at it. So social media, I saw, I'm not even going to say anything, an individual had posted that they heard what was going on, and all they knew was they had to get to the school. They had to get here to get their babies. That was the only thing they could do, was get here to get their babies. And they said They didn't even remember going through red lights. They didn't remember stopping. They went from point A to point B to the school and didn't know how they did it. What's that one untrained person going to do when they take out a car full of 4 trained people that can not only respond and render aid and stop something? So it's just something to think about. And that's just kind of like, that hit home to me. That was like something that really like struck me, and I thought it was important. I have a kid in the school. If I wasn't a police officer, would I want to come? Would I want to do it? Yeah. But, maybe it's time to have these conversations with us, our friends, and our neighbors. If we can limit the footprint of the amount of people we have working here, we can actually have the people doing their jobs here. That's, I guess, next slide. And basically, we stay by, I didn't get to see this one really. So we stay safe, is this yours?
I'll take it over for you. So one of the biggest things, I think, not just in schools, but really in our communities, in our homes, in our families, is really we stay safe by being proactive. But if you see something, say something. I can't tell you, working at central office, working as a building administrator, the number of times when somebody say, hey, I just thought you might want to know. Or, hey, did you see that? What you prevent are big crises from happening. Big crises from happening, and also helping provide support for an individual who may be having difficulty. And so when we talk about school safety, it really, we started out with relationships, and we're ending it with relationships and communication. I think that's what really it's all about. And then providing support. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Nelson.
I think I mentioned that this is ongoing, and I think that's important. Today, I'm not sure if you've been able to talk with your children. We gave you advance notice, but today we did practice lockdowns today. And that was something that we're able to work on some other things as part of that training. I know on the Wednesdays, the early release Wednesdays, those are times that in the past, I might have been in a situation to say we really need to be using that time to focus on our curriculum and what we're teaching. Well, guess what? Safety is one of those priorities that's the time where Joe and Paul and others have been so helpful to be able to come in and help us be able to take that training. That so much is, we're trained as educators. We're being put into a spot that's not usually something that we're used to. And a lot of it is also, as they mentioned, more situational, a situational awareness, right? We always like things to be able to say, I do 1, 2, 3, and that's what I do. Some of this now is coming back. And that's not just something that you can read and be able to practice and execute. It's something that we have to come back and be able to practice. And so, as Steve mentioned, we started with the idea of being proud of the work that we've done and the relationships that we've been able to build, but also want to let you know that that's going to continue to be able to be ongoing as we can continue to strengthen those relationships, but also be able to help us be prepared to the best that we can in situations, whether they be all the different things that may come up. Everything from fires and gas leaks and snowstorms to intruders and things that may be happening out also in the community. So want to have at least an opportunity for people for some questions. If anyone has some questions, I think we're a small enough group, we'll be able to do that. I also know people may not be comfortable asking a question. We're also going to be available for people if they have any questions, concerns, or any feedback that they want to share with us, because that's helpful. That's helpful for us to be able to go back and be able to look at continuing to work on improving things. Are there any questions? Anything that people have that people would like to ask? I got to be careful. I give the caveat with that we're still way up at this high level. We have a crisis plan, but we're not going to share the ins and outs of that crisis plan in being able to do that, because that's something that we want to make sure is protected so that it's not going to get in the wrong hands of people to be able to do that. But we're able to answer any questions that people have or any comments or feedback that people want to make. JP.
So Alertus is the internal communication that we have with staff and students. It also communicates with students at the high school. That is operational as we speak. We've done a lot of work since November 15th and continue to do some work in making that operational. But it is operational and at this time. And so at the high school, we will be doing a practice drill next Thursday, I believe. And so that will be rolling it out and doing a test with that. At our other schools, our elementary schools and the middle school today in adult ed, we did a lockdown drill where we did use the alerter system, and it was successful. So,
yeah. So, and I know for me, I knew the lockdowns were happening today, and I was at my desk working along, and the next thing I know on my computer is boom, we're now in the alerter system. And what do you think my first reaction was? Yeah, it was like, oh boy. And then I was able to kind of get, whoa, hold on, read it. It's a drill. It was be able to come back and do that. But that's what we're looking for, to be able to have that. And so those are the things that we continue to build on, to be able to go back and look at that for it. So, yeah. Anything else?
Now that I'm thinking about it, like this Alice program, what we do too is like when we go back, we talked about the traditional lockdown, you're in your room. It works great when you're in a room, but how did we deal with recess? How did we deal with lunch? How did we deal with gym? That was one of the great questions. What do we do with the kids and the staff there? So that's kind of like the approach that we take, and we look and we try to train. And what we do with this whole program is we empower the teachers and teach the teachers it's options-based to do what's best for them and their students. And so we teach the teachers, and the teachers that know those kids, know the emotional intelligence of those kids, and how to best facilitate what their needs are. And that's what this is kind of like all about. And
sorry, just to mention and end on that. Yesterday at Carl J. Lamb, they practiced evacuations during lunch. Woo! How about that, right? Okay, that's the elementary school at the lunch. I don't know if you've ever seen elementary school lunch. It's a racket in itself. And now we're going to throw in lunch. What are you, crazy? Well, and Sherry and her kids and students and staff did an outstanding job. I had a meeting later that afternoon, and your head custodian was coming to the meeting. And he was a little bit late, and he basically just said, lunch, lockdowns, oh my God. But I say that because in the years prior, we probably wouldn't have practiced that. We wouldn't have, because that would have been disruptive. It would have taken away time to be able to do that. That's the shift that you're seeing for us to be able to say no, whether it is recess or whether it is phys ed class that's outside. Those are the things that we have to come back and be able to at least have some training for, to be able to have some options and some awareness in that. So I use that as an example of showing what Joe was talking about for it. Yeah. Yep. Yep. There you go. Nice, nice. That's awesome. All right. Any other questions, feedback, comments? We're going to stick around because I know there might be something that is probably might be more individual based that people may not be comfortable sharing the group with that. Yep.
I was one town over when that happened that day in November, and I still don't know. I guarantee you my wife, who's on Facebook all day, knows all about this, but she's not here. So I was super comforted, like, hearing what was happening with the first responders, like, that they all went right in, and
Yep.
tons of them showed up. Good job, thank you for going in. And then the weird thing with the people coming out of the woods was a situation where they were in the middle of evacuating kids to the buses, heading off to the reunification site, and it stopped, put no one else outside until we figure out who that is.
Yep.
That was great, and that was all making me more and more comfortable, like I didn't have to jump in my truck and rush over here. And, you know, I know what you mean, like on some level, you feel like you have to.
Yep.
What if my kid is in mortal danger?
Absolutely.
I knew it would mess everything up, and I was fighting with that. So we heard a lot about bad places to get information and misinformation. And I think the fact that whole event was a big misinformation attack, I guarantee you most of us didn't even know what those were before that
Yep.
day. There's a term, what is it, swatting, right?
Yep.
Never heard it before that day.
Right.
So what is the best official, fast, accurate place?
And as I mentioned, that's where I own that, because that's where I fell down and not getting that information out quicker on our apps and our phone. I have, that's something that we probably borderline harass you to get signed up for, okay? And that's where we push out information. I can do that as we sit through the app. I can do it on, push it out, what would be like a text message. Out would be what would be a notification. Push notification. We can put it right onto the school's Facebook, part of that. Sam's even got us on Instagram, so we can stay cool with the kids. And then we also have the ability to record a message as well. And so those are the things that we've got to be able, in that situation, to be sending out information. And rather than hearing one message from us, you may hear 3 in a row giving you updates of where things are. Right? You can say, is the school in lockdown or not? We're going to tell you we're in lockdown. We may not give you a ton of more information than that, but that's you at least saying the school is telling me this is in lockdown to be able to do that.
So that was great, and I found myself wanting more, faster, so that's obviously not always possible, especially if you're not sure it's accurate, but that we fully support as parents.
Yep.
As much as you can give us, especially to know that there were people there. Like my son was at the junior high with Joe, and I got him on the phone, and he's saying everybody's getting released. The parents are coming to pick people up. Should I stay here? And I'm like, are there police there? He said, yeah, I can see 3 out the window
Right.
right now.
That was a
What's going on? No shooting, right?
that was a takeaway with us. Is even the event happened at the high school, but guess what? We have a lot of other kids, people who have students at other schools. We have some of our employees who have kids at the high school. And so that happened where we had people on that day rush into those elementary and middle schools to also dismiss their kids that day. Very understandable, okay? Something you wouldn't expect, but what we've got to be ready for is, what if someone is trying to cause a false event there and they want to set something up at that particular school? That's why when you're seeing there's going to be police there to be able to help in terms of being able to have people come back, because that's going to be that's going to be a reaction that people have, and it's understood. We get it, and we have to be ready for it. That was something else. I know the information that we're sending is, we walk that line between sending information to cause any panic, but guess what? By not sending information, that's causing panic. So we're going to be sending information, and we're going to be pushing that out throughout the district to be able to do that so people can have that information. And then you just kind of saw what some of those ideas was. We're asking you at your best to hold back from rushing out to be able to do that. Not because we understand exactly what that urge is, but we've got to let people come in and be able to do their jobs for that. Just the high school.
Would it be like a smarter option to have the district so parents don't rush to the other schools? Like there's an instance in the high school, a district is locked down, please.
Those are things that we may have some different options about putting that into. For example, we may not have people go outside into recess, right? In terms of, and that, we might have a modified type of situation in that situation until we can get more information with that. Because what you would see is, obviously, as Sanford, especially in this building, Sanford Regional Technical Center, we've got 8 sending schools coming to us as well. And so they're clued in, they're tied into what we're doing, and so they may also being able to be aware to just say, we're going to be putting ourselves in lockdown over there, or at least what a modified lockdown, so that people aren't going to be going outside with the unknown, right? It's the unknown and walking that line to being safe as opposed to changing your everyday procedures in the moment for that. So, yep.
I was at the high school during the incident, and I have 2 boys at Carl Lamb, and my oldest shared there was only 3 kids left that day, and why didn't mom come get them? And I was like, mom was busy at the high school. But my question is, if they went into district lockdown, even modified, would then parents, if you're in lockdown, then they can't go to Carl Lamb, for example, and get their kids, right? Yeah, and I just wonder if that would cause more issues, like parents flooding to go to the school to get their kids, but if the answer is
We
no.
were in a full-blown lockdown.
Yeah.
We kind of did a soft one at our school. We secured the perimeter of the building. It always is secured, but we did not go to recess, and we triple checked, every window, every door, and just kept everybody in and did business as usual. But then parents could come and get their kids.
Through the normal procedures to come in and get those, right? To be able to,
Stations outside.
yep.
Kids came out to parents didn't go in to get them. But I see what you mean, like if we had been in a full-blown lockdown too, then we would have had, parents at our building trying to get kids who couldn't. That could have caused a problem.
Yep.
That's what you mean, right, Beth?
Yeah, just sort of, it's hard, I don't think it's a hard question, I feel like, to ask and to answer, in that you're gonna get bombarded with hundreds of parents and have the doors locked. Is it better to let parents get their kids, or to say, please stay from the school?
And that's probably some information that has to come from the school. With that, we ask you not to come in. This is being out of caution to be able to do that. We will be sharing more information when it becomes available, because that is at least helping in a difficult situation some of the information that you're at least aware of to come back and be able to follow that. And I think some of that has to be, you want to know your child's safe. And so, yeah, we're out of an extra caution. We are putting the school into lockdown. People are safe. Please understand that people are safe. At this time, we ask that you not come to the school if at all possible. We will continue to update you with information. And I think that's probably what people are looking for, to be able to take that information the best that they can. You're right. There's no perfect, you don't come back to say, hey, that's on page 18, and you can follow exactly on how to do that on your crisis plan. So, great. Good feedback. Good dialogue. Anything else? All right, so we'll wrap up tonight. I want to thank Steve and Paul and Joe for the work tonight, but also the work that you're doing as really being, as I mentioned, making safety a priority. And that's not a priority that just happens one day a month. It's a priority every day, what we're doing. And thank you for doing that. I want to thank everyone else for being able to also come out. That's much appreciated. We have this recorded, and that'll be something that we'll also have available for people to also access that weren't able to make it tonight. Great, thank you.